shopping centre owner. It owns shopping centres in Australia.
Stickers and dealers has been a critical time to try and sell assets.
For local investors as concerns about Europe and the mixed domestic.
Today, we are interviewing Susan Lannon, who has worked for the ABC for the past 11 years. She is currently the senior finance reporter and has reported across the Asia-Pacific region, including countries like China, Indonesia, Laos, and Pakistan. Besides reporting for the ABC, Susan also spends her time grilling chief executives, analyzing the economy, and dissecting company balance sheets. Thank you for joining us here today, and we're students from UTS InSearch. So we understand that you work as a radio current affairs finance reporter. With such a fast-paced job, what's an average day of work like?
Well, it can be very busy. On an average day, I start work at 10 o'clock, but then usually I need to do a radio current affairs story within 2 hours. So, for example, on Friday, I did a story about the Greek debt crisis. So that means reading very quickly research notes from economists that they send me, looking at what the financial markets are doing and interviewing some people, and then writing and editing the story myself. And then an hour later, I had another story to do, which was about the Chinese share market. So you can go from one subject to another subject in a very short period of time. Also now journalists' jobs are more busy, so my radio current affairs stories I will also write them up for online. So for example, on Friday I finished work at about 6:30 after doing 4 stories altogether during the day. So it's a lot more busy than it used to be.
So you were talking about the Greek debt crisis. How do you think the news of this can affect Australia or the Asia-Pacific region?
Yes, well look, the direct economic impact on Australia is not big, but the broader implications are quite serious because it affects financial markets. So obviously it's affected the Australian share market and also it's affected Asia-Pacific share markets. Like yesterday we saw most of the markets, the Australian market was down about 1%, some of the Asian markets were down about 2%. So the thing with the Greek debt crisis is that it affects confidence of investors. It affects, and if the share market's lower in Australia, people's superannuation pensions will be lower, they will be affected. So it affects economic confidence, businesses don't want to invest. So it does need to be solved. There's the danger it could spread to other countries, although at this moment it seems it will be contained within Greece. But if it spreads to Europe, the rest of Europe, like Italy and Portugal, you could have another financial crisis which would affect the whole world.
So what was the experience of both documenting and communicating this Greek debt crisis like?
Yes, well look, that's sort of big news, and that's big news for a finance journalist. So on the one hand it's really exciting, that sounds bad to say, but it is a buzz to get involved in a big economics or finance story. But then you also have to try and be sensitive because we're talking about people's lives that are being affected. So there's so many Greek people that are out of work, the unemployment rate is something like 30%. A lot of people have lost their businesses, a lot of people are struggling to survive. So it's very challenging to try and be sensitive, but also trying to summarise what is a really complex story and not just, say, blame Greece for what's happening. It's a lot more complex than that.
Definitely. Adding on to that, talking about the sensitivity of news, with ABC News being the biggest broadcasting corporation in Australia, how do you ensure that the news you broadcast is both fair and balanced?
Yes, well we have to. It's part of our charter responsibilities. So we've got editorial guidelines and we have to follow that. The ABC has to be independent, has to be impartial, it has to be accurate. So that involves being balanced in the way that you present the news. So you may have a newsmaker say the government is releasing a policy, but then you need to get a reaction to that. So we try to present more than one side of the story. So that's how we try and be balanced and not sensationalise the news.
As an economic reporter though, what do you think has been the most sensationalised piece of news and why do you think this is so?
Well, I think a lot of the stories on the corporate tax on the multinationals evading or minimising their tax has been quite sensational. But I totally understand the reason why, because people feel a sense of injustice. Why are these big, huge companies paying so little tax? Now, the thing is that a lot of this tax minimisation is legal, and it's really up to governments to change the laws. So I understand why that's sensationalised, because also when you sensationalise a piece of news, you do get more viewers. Now, it sounds like I'm justifying it. I don't think you need to overly sensationalise it, but if it's accurate and you're not blowing it out of proportion, I think some degree of sensationalism is acceptable, but you shouldn't be over the top.
Okay, then that's actually all the questions we've got for you today. So do you have any questions or comments?
Yes, thank you so much for letting me take part in this. And good luck with your